like I said, my name is Shaylin. I'm one of our gap year consultants. So essentially, I work with students and families and helping them explore these opportunities and seeing if this is something that could be a good fit for you. So basically, what we're going to do today's kind of a cool day because I'm joined by some really awesome gap year alums from our programs. We've got Liv, we have Raina, and we have Kelsey that are all going to be joining us today, which is super exciting. And they all went on one of our GAP programs or a combination of our GAP programs. So this is going to be kind of like a Q&A style where, I'm going to kind of queue up some questions that are common questions that families have to sort of help you get an understanding of what the lead up to these programs were like, what it was like on these programs, and also, kind of what that post program experience has been like too. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do today. But before we get into that, I think it's really helpful for me to give you a little bit of an overview of EF and kind of what we're all about. So I'm just going to hop right into this. So for those of you that like this is your first time getting any information about EF, like I always think it's helpful for those folks on the call just to give you a little bit more context. So EF, simply put, we're the world leader in educational travel. So we've been in business for close to 60 years. We've helped millions of people travel to new countries and learn new languages and discover new things about the world and themselves in the world too. So you may have been on an EF program before, potentially as like an international short-term travel trip with your high school or going to DC or something like that. We have a lot of different experiences that we offer for our students. But yes, EF educational tours does provide opportunities for students to also be able to travel with their high schools and middle schools. So that may be something that you have heard of before or potentially been on one of those trips. So I always think it's helpful to kind of see this map and look at these numbers. So I am one of over 50,000 EF employees. We have over 600 offices and schools in over 100 different countries, and we have over 1 million learners every year. Pretty wild, right? 1 million learners every year. I mean, that's a huge amount of students that we're, helping to learn about new cultures and really, all focused in this mission that we have of opening the world through education and really being able to deliver on these experiences for students of learning more about themselves and learning more about the world and their place in it. So, when it comes to gap year specifically, I want to talk a little bit about how these programs fit into our global mission. So, these programs are really designed for students to be able to have an experience between the ages of 18 and 22. So I think this is really important to mention that these programs are great for students that are finishing high school before going to college, but they're also amazing for students that have completed a couple of years of college and are deciding that they want to kind of refocus and, maybe take a different path, or students that have graduated from college that are thinking that they might want to do something like this before they start a career. So, as I'm sure you all feel or have felt, like this is certainly a stage in life where it's a real inflection point, and can be a lot of pressure of kind of deciding what you want to do and what you want to study and where you want to study it. And for a lot of our students on these calls and families that we work with where, they're high school seniors, it's it's kind of like they've been on sort of this educational conveyor belt, if you will, for the past 10 to 15 years or so that has never really slowed down. And now they're, kind of at this phase where it's like, okay, do I go to college, university? What do I do? And there's a lot of pressure and expectations and all those sorts of things. And it can feel like the stakes are really high. And, for our students, we see these as an opportunity for students that are in need of a pause and maybe a little bit of a need of a reset and a reflection on, where they've been and, where they are and where they want to go from here. And I think it's really important to mention this is not because these students are lost or because they've slipped off of that conveyor belt, right? It's most of the students that come into our programs, they have a high level of curiosity and intentionality and, self-awareness of what they're maybe looking for. And I think that that's just a really powerful thing to be able to share. So I always like to mention that because I think it's important to understand that the right gap experience is not going to hold students back. It's going to help to propel them forward to what's next. Okay, awesome. So, and that's kind of when our, these programs come into play. I always love this. Like our programs are designed to help students thrive in an ever-changing world, and I find that that's so true. And these programs are really designed to help students build confidence, find their path, and prepare them to thrive for this ever-changing world while staying really competitive against the, hundreds of thousands of other students that are competing for the same spots at the same colleges, jobs, internships, all those sorts of things. So, it's just it's I think it's an important thing to mention. And this is all through, of course, immersing in different cultures and forging these new experiences and discovering more about themselves in the world, as I've said a few times now. So now I want to give you just a really quick breakdown of what these programs are. Now we host info sessions that dive a little bit deeper into this Thursday night. So I'm going to just like touch on these things briefly, but I think it's important to know what our offerings are if this is your first time here getting information. So we offer semester programs and our full gap year program. So semester programs are going to flow really well within the academic calendar, fall and spring semester. And the EF gap year is a 23-week long program that flows through the whole academic calendar. So starts in the fall and then ends in the spring with a winter break in the middle. And students can do, I know our gap year alums on our call today we have some kind of like a mix of programs that they've done. So I think that'll be really interesting to hear from them in a little bit. So I think this is also helpful too, just to understand what's included in these programs: flights, transportation, activities, accommodations, usually about half of the meals, mentorship, which I think is what makes our programs really special, and 24/7 EF gap year support. So zeroing in a little bit on what that support looks like, there's a lot of different people that are involved in helping to make these programs what they are. We have, the cohort of students that are traveling with the other students on their program, which I know Liv and I were chatting before. We kind of opened up the webinar and she was chatting about how she just got together with a bunch of her students from her cohort, a bunch of her friends, which I think is so awesome. The tour directors and the local guides. So these are the people that are taking care of all the logistics, getting you from point A to point B, providing that experiential learning experience, and being able to make those connections to what you're seeing and doing and learning. And then you have your gap year advisors and your student life coordinator. So I kind of put these folks a little bit in the same group of support leading up to your program and on program, except the student life coordinators are going to be on the program traveling with you, and the advisors are supporting you virtually leading up to the programs, and also helping with all of our pre-departure prep and things like that. So a lot of people that are here to support, and what I think is something that makes our programs really unique and special. So now I want to talk a little bit about these individual programs. So we're going to start with our semester program. So again, these work really well for students that are deferring for a semester, students that are graduating early, or just want to take a break before, during, or after their college experience. These are just really incredible opportunities that students can actually earn up to 9 college credits on these programs as well. So I'm going to pop to the next slide. So quick overview of our 3 semester options that we offer. So we have our Changemaker, our Voyager, and our Pathfinder program. So our Pathfinder program is kind of like a really good opportunity to get a taste of a lot of different countries and cultures all throughout Europe. So it travels to all those countries mentioned on the screen. And in every place that you're in, you're exploring a different like industry, different potential area of study. It's meant to give you exposure to, what a field of study could look like for you to, help you find your path, hence the name. We also have our Changemaker semester. Our Changemaker program is awesome. It travels to Costa Rica, the DR, Peru, and Ecuador. And this program has more of a focus in service learning and sustainability and environmentalism. Our students do a orientation at the United Nations University for Peace. Really incredible program. great opportunity to kind of understand different ecosystems within Latin America. And then the Voyager program travels to Australia, Thailand, and Japan. And that program is a little bit more centered around like embracing your adventurous side and exploring, the different natural wonders of these countries that you're in, and just really being able to dive in deep there. So now I want to talk a little bit about our first semester abroad programs. So these particular programs are really incredible for students that are looking to combine a gap semester with a little bit more of a traditional study abroad experience. And that combination is just can sometimes provide opportunities that are really interesting for students. So these programs are a little bit longer than our traditional semesters. They range from 12 to 16 weeks. And we partner with some of the world's top colleges and universities to facilitate, experiences that are going to be culturally immersive, be able to, have these international education experiences really brought to life. And students end these semesters with 12 transferable college credits. So we have two semesters right now that are about to take off for this upcoming school year, which is the Mosaic of Spain program, Language, Culture, and Politics, and a partnership that we have with Colorado State University called the Global Challenge Semester. And we actually have another program that's not listed on this slide, but it is a program that goes through Seoul and all throughout South Korea. And that's we just kind of launched that, and we have like a ton of interest in that. We've gotten a bunch of applications for that as well. These particular programs, Mosaic of Spain and the Global Challenge Semester, there is a little bit more of like an application process with that. But definitely like really incredible curated curriculum. You're learning more about these countries, you're learning more about these cultures, and you're coming out of this with 12 transferable college credits, which is really amazing. And then we have the probably what we're most well known for, which is our the EF Gap Year, as we like to call it, which is our 23-week-long program. And this is really one of a kind. It's broken into 2 semesters with a winter break in between. And the first semester is all about guided exploration and really kind of settling into this incredible year. You travel to 12 cities across 3 continents with a cohort of students. And each week you explore a new city by engaging with different themes and topics that are really meant to foster global awareness and also personal and social development as well. So our students start in Europe, and then they travel over to Australia, and then they go up to Thailand. And then the second semester, they have the opportunity to choose between an international internship in Stockholm, Sweden, or going the language learning route and studying at one of our EF international language schools. And then this is just a quick breakdown. I think it's always helpful for transparency to see what the price ranges of these programs look like. Ultimately, whichever program that you choose or whichever configuration of programs, all of our programs are really built as a gateway to success for college and beyond. So it's really meant to be an investment in that college readiness or career readiness or whatever that may be. Obviously, this is a very quick run through of those offerings, but hopefully like this gets you a little inspired for the conversation that we'll have with our amazing students on our call here today. And if you want to have more questions about these programs, your gap year consultants can also help you as well. So now time for the 3 stars of our webinar today. We have 3 incredible students on our call that have all participated in our GAP programs. We have Raina, we have Kelsey, and we have Liv. So I would love to just start off, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see you all better. But before we do that, I'd love to just go around real quick. Liv, maybe we'll start with you, and would love to hear if you want to introduce yourself, share which programs that you did, and curious where you're joining us on the call from today.
Hi, I'm Liv. I did the Changemaker semester in the fall, and I just got back from Voyager, which I did in the spring. And I'm joining you from my dining room in my house in New Jersey.
Love it. Thanks, Liv. Kelsey?
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I'm also in New Jersey. I just came from a workout class, so excuse my appearance, but I did the EF Gap semester in spring of 2023, and it was the Discover program at the time, but I got to travel to a bunch of different countries, and I stayed in Berlin for a period of time learning the language, and then Stockholm, Sweden, and I had a marketing internship there. So I had a great time.
Awesome. Raina?
Hi, I'm Raina. So I did the gap year from 2021 to 2022. My program was a little bit different than what they have now, but I did 2 weeks across Europe, just traveling with the cohort. I did a 6 week language study in Spain, like living in Barcelona. And then I did 6 weeks of service projects in Costa Rica. And then we had winter break and then followed it up with about 3 weeks doing like guided tours and stuff in Ecuador and the Galapagos, and then finished it up with my internship in Berlin and then London too for the final.
Awesome. Love it. Well, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen real quick just so we can see everyone a little bit clearer here. Wonderful. Well, a couple of things. So there's a lot that I want to hit on today. And I think what's going to be really helpful is if we kind of start this off with understanding a little bit more about like the decision making and planning process of deciding to actually do something like this, right? Because that's where a lot of the people on this call today are kind of at, like they're trying to sort of figure out like, what does this look like for me, right? How am I going to make this happen? And then talking a little bit about that on program experience. You know, you decide you want to do this, awesome. What does it feel like when you're actually on this program traveling with your cohort? And then I also want to talk a little bit about, what that post gap experience was like and what the impacts were of these programs and really just what you're up to now. I think will be really helpful to hear, and I think you all bring something different to the conversation, so I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper into that. So the first question I would love to ask is, what made you decide to go on a gap program? Like, what was that moment where you were like, yeah, like this is what I want to do? And I'd love to maybe we'll go like the same order, I guess. Does that feel right? Or anyone who wants to kick things off, if anyone feels inspired. But would love to hear what led you to that point of deciding that this was what you were going to do.
I guess I'll start. I was gonna go to school as an art major, and at last minute, I had changed my mind right when all applications were over. It was too late to apply to college, and I had nothing going on. And I was like, okay, I need to do something if I'm gonna take a gap year. And I realized I really like to travel, and I started looking at programs, and this was one of them. And that's kind of how I got here. I needed something to do, and it looked like a great way to make the most out of my gap year.
Yeah. Liv, I have a quick follow-up question for you on that, because a lot of families right now that like I'm working with, it's kind of like feeling a little like they're making those decisions to kind of what feels like at the 11th hour a bit, where it's like, okay, it's almost the fall. Are we going to do this? Are we not going to do this? What does this look like? Um, and what would be, I'm just going to give you a little follow up, and then I want to hear the same answer or the same question from Kelsey and Raina. But what advice would you give to a student that maybe was feeling like it was too late, or do I have enough time? Like, what would you tell them? Or feeling like it was, oh my gosh, like, time is of the essence. Like, what piece of advice would you give to them?
Um, it's definitely not too late. I That was something I kept telling myself. I was shutting down opportunities because I was saying I'm too late. Like, I'm applying to college now, and I'm like, it's too late to start the next semester. It's too late for this. And go into everything with the open mind. Like, if the deadline's coming up, you could always reach out to one of the advisors, be like, hey, are there spots available? If there isn't, is there another program that I would be able to join? Or just there's people there to help you get to where you need to be and make the most of it. It's never too late, and I joined pretty late in my opinion. I was just like really frightened that I wasn't going to be able to do anything with my time, and I ended up joining two programs and making the best year I could.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really cool too. Like the fact that you were able to do the Changemaker and the Voyager is a good example too of how you can really like layer in our programs. And I have students that will do that too. Like, let's just say the full year doesn't work for them for whatever reason. Like they might do like two back-to-back semesters, which is cool too. Kelsey, Raina, talk to me a little bit about what your process was like for deciding to do this.
Yeah, so I actually took my gap semester after college. I was in college during COVID, and I just felt like when I was about to graduate, I was like, I'm not ready to enter the real world. Like I needed more experience, and I also really wanted to meet like-minded people who also felt like there's more out there. And I was challenged by the idea of like, I'm gonna be behind, everybody's gonna get their big girl, big boy jobs, and I'm gonna be envious looking on LinkedIn and just thinking I'm behind, but you're not behind. Like I I had that idea and then I went on my gap semester and I was like, this is everything I needed. Like I met people who wanted to have big conversations and see new places and go on little side trips and just really bring like adventure to life. And it really changed my perspective of so many things. Like I can ramble on about how great my gap semester was for so long because the people I met, the cultures that I was immersed in, and like the challenges too. They toughen you up and they make you a better person. So you won't be behind and you'll probably get a bigger idea of what success and happiness looks like for you because you'll be exposed to so much more and people from everywhere else. Like I have friends now in Denver, in Montana, in California. I'm from New Jersey. Like I went to a college in New Jersey, so I kind of had like everybody was from the same place. Everybody in my life up until my gap semester kind of had a similar mindset. So meeting people from these different places in these new places all together, it was just such an amazing learning experience. And I can keep going, but I'll give Raina the space to talk.
So my decision to do the gap year is a little bit different than the other two girls. Um, I've always had a passion for travel. My sister's adopted from Ethiopia. So my parents kind of like instilled in us at a really young age that travel was important, just for like the soul. Like it's just good for you. So I knew that I wanted to travel my whole life, did a lot of it growing up. And when I was in high school, I was one of those like never studied for anything kids. So the idea of having to do 4 more years of school after high school was just super unappealing to me. But I also want to do something with my life, and I didn't want to just be going nowhere. So my mom actually saw a Facebook ad for EF Gap Year when I was a sophomore in high school. And we were like, wait, is this a scam? And then when we found it, it was like an actual thing, and that this trip was something I could actually do as a gap year before going to college or to figure out what I wanted to do. We signed up basically immediately. I think I was the first person signed up for my gap year. Um, but it just kind of like fell into my lap. It was really ironic how it happened. But I'm so glad it did. It was life changing, and I'm sure we'll get into why and later. But
Yeah, well, thank you both. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think the moral of this question, the answers to this question here is that it's a little bit different for everyone. So there's no like one size fits all. Like if you're listening to this or like you're listening back to the recording of this, like it doesn't have to be like, oh, I decided I wanted to do this, and then like everything is accepted, I guess you could say. Like everyone has a different path. So and I can tell that all three of you have like a lot of passion and excitement about these experiences, which is so awesome. I know, Kelsey, some of the things that you were saying about like like the people that you're making, and I love what you said too about the conversations that you were having. And I actually was working with a family earlier today, and we were talking about this, and the student was saying how like she actually had just finished, I think, 1 year of college. It was, yeah, 1 year. And then she just felt like she couldn't really connect with anyone at her college, and she just wasn't really sure what she wanted to do next. So she's actually going to do a gap semester with us and then transfer to another school for the spring, which is super exciting. And they were talking about how like, yeah, I just want to have conversations with people and feel like they're like I'm talking about things of substance. And so I love that you said that, because I think it's so true. And I think that that's something that's really unique about these experiences is that everyone that is coming into these experiences has a different story, but it seems like there's a little bit of like that red thread of like curiosity about the world around them, and wanting to learn more about the countries and the cultures that they're in. So I would love to hear like a little bit about, like, we can kind of transition a bit to that, on program experience and thinking about, that moment of like starting the program. I think that's actually my first question, which maybe we can just have one of you answer this just so we can get through a couple other questions too. If anyone, or multiple, if you feel like you have something to share on this topic, but I'd be curious, like, because a lot of students that we work with, they're excited, but they're a little scared too, and they're worried about making friends, and they're worried about like those first few days where, like, you're kind of figuring out who your people are. So I would be curious to hear, let's just hear from all of you. I'd be curious to hear from all of you, like, what were those first, maybe like that first like week, what was that like, and what did it feel like when you arrived on your program?
I had two very different experiences socially. My first program was Changemaker, and that had about 23 kids. So we were a pretty small group, and everyone is welcome. Like, they're all excited to be there. No one knows anyone. They're all like up in your face asking you questions. It's very inclusive. Like, everyone hasn't met anyone and they're still trying to meet their own type of people. For Changemaker, I did get into a friend group immediately and I kind of stuck by them. And although I love them, when I went on Voyager, I had a very different experience where there was 60 of us instead. And I ended up not having a friend group till later on, but I got really close with a bunch of different people. I got to talk to all different people, learn different backstories, and it was just a lot more eye-opening. And I kept on floating from different groups, but I ended up having a better time because I got to hang out with different types of people instead of staying in my one close group.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. And interesting too, kind of a cool comparison when you do the full year or do two back-to-back semesters of having kind of exposure to different types of students too. So that's awesome. Maybe we'll stick with the same order. Kelsey, talk to me a little bit about your first few moments on your program that first week.
So my program had around 60 people as well, and I was lucky enough to meet my best friend in the Newark airport. Like, we were flying out of the same airport and we just hit it off. And I remember she got sick on the plane. I was taking care of her. Like, we were just together as one from the beginning. But we were put in a hostel with these two girls from California. And when I tell you, like, our vibes just clicked so easily. And there honestly was like the different friend groups, and you see everybody and you're like, should we join that friend group or should we? But sticking together with my it was two Jersey girls, two California girls, like sticking with us and just going into everything together was amazing. And we ended up branching out and becoming friends with multiple other people, but I don't know what kind of magic EF does, like in the works of pairing people together for the hostel rooms, but we could not stop talking. Like, I know I'm yapping right now. I'm like hopped up on adrenaline from my workout, but we were yapping and it was just, that's the best. Like, because everybody there needs a new friend. They need to make friends because they don't have friends because you're all on this new experience together. So it's kind of fun because you're not the only new guy. Everybody's new. And that's something like you can be yourself. You don't have to worry about like, I don't know, like I feel like growing up from middle school to high school, it was always about being this person and people liking you. People are gonna like you, like the person that you are. You don't have to be anything besides yourself. And I think that's a beautiful thing because it's people who have never met you before. They're all going into this and are excited about this newness together. And it's just, it's so refreshing. It's refreshing to have so many people excited to meet you. You're excited to meet them. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. And that's so cool too. Like, it is kind of neat how the pairings work with the roomings, where usually people do really hit it off. And the nice thing too is, like, if it, like, let's just say like you really connect with someone else and you want to room with them instead, like, you have a student life coordinator there and you can work that out too. So yeah, but I'm so happy that that was the case, and a lot of the times that is how it shakes out, which is awesome. How about you, Raina?
Yeah, so my like intro like place where my gap year started was in Boston, and we had about 100 something kids because it was a big year. I think there was like exactly 100 or something. And we all got to this hotel at different times, like from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. People were just rolling in. And I just remember all of us were running around the hotel like little children, just so excited to run down the halls, be like, who's in this room? Like making friends left and right. And then, so we were already like all getting along, everybody was blending well. And then the next day, like the first day on the bus ride, I remember looking over the seat and there were like these 4 guys and 2 girls. And I was like, we should be friends, just like kidding, but joking it out there. And obviously, we wanted to get to know each other. And that group of people stayed my best friends, actually till now. Like, I still see them almost every like 3 months, and we all live across the country from each other. But it was really cool on my gap year because since we had so many different like areas to go, and I think some of the newer ones are all staying together, but like we would break up. So I would be in Spain and I had a friend group there, and then we all left and went to different countries because you got to pick like different ones. It was kind of complicated and different. So then I was in Costa Rica for 6 weeks with an entirely different group of people and only a few people from my previous one. And then the 20 of us there became best friends. So we just like met different groups of people all around the world, and then you meet the locals too. So it was just really cool to like see everybody blending with everyone because everybody has such like-minded passions and goals. It's just really cool. Like I'm still really close with so many people.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing to hear. Yeah. And just to give a little bit of context for anyone that's kind of curious. So, this is just, I think one thing that's really cool about EF is that when our programs finish, we do kind of like a review on the program. We talk to some students from the programs and we kind of make modifications and changes if we need to, just to help like make them as great as they possibly can. Like, um, live for the Voyager. So the Voyager we used to have where, or did you go to New Zealand for years or no?
I
Were you
did
the
go
one?
to New Zealand, and
Okay,
for
so you were one of the last people then. Yeah.
yeah, and Changemaker, we went to the DR, and it was originally supposed to be Panama.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But something I just wanted to throw in is that the friend groups do change. Like at the start of the trip, some people were a bit scared because they're like, oh, the group's already made. Maybe I got here late, or I feel like I just didn't get close to them fast enough. And they changed. You will see people hanging out with a completely different group by the end of it. My friends I made at the end were in completely separate friend groups. And I knew if I had spoken to them at the start of the trip, we wouldn't have been together because we were all separated. And just, you're with these people for months. And you're going to want to start talking to different people, start hanging out with different people. And it's not because you don't love them anymore. It's just you want to like branch out, or maybe you just need a bit of space, and it's all completely okay because everyone is still excited. Like these are all still new people that you haven't, you're still meeting with them for the first time, even if you're a month into the trip. It's not like high school where you grew up with them. There's still all new faces and backstories, and people are excited to see you. No matter if you're a few days late and you're the last one to show up, there will be people there to greet you and want to be your friend. It's just an amazing experience.
Yeah. Thanks for so much for sharing that, Liv. And it's so true. It's like, and everyone, I don't know if you all found this, but like everyone I feel like on these programs is pretty like open to making new friends because I think you might have said this, Kelsey, like everyone's new. Like you're not the new kid, like everyone's new. And I think that that's what makes it really cool. Um, but just one thing I want to touch on, just for anyone that wants clarity on this. So we do make modifications and enhancements and changes to the program just based on feedback essentially. So that's why like the gap year that Reina went on a few years ago, like the structure of it is like a little bit different now because kind of like what you alluded to, like it was kind of confusing because there were like a lot of options. So now we just give you one option for the second semester. Like, do you want to do an internship or do you want to do a language learning? So just yeah, kind of adding some context there if you're like, wait, what's that? I just remember that on the other side. So, but I think that's something that's really cool. Like innovation, I think is really important for anything of making sure that, these programs are staying fresh and, that we're constantly innovating on them. So just if you're curious about that, just a little bit more context on that. This is a question I always love to ask students because I know for me, I didn't do a gap year EF gap year program, but I studied abroad when I was in college for a year, and I remember like you have those defining moments, right? Like, I don't even want to say that they're highlights. It's like almost like a turning point where you're like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, I'm not the same person I was, or wow, like I just learned like about a whole new side of myself, or I'm really glad that I'm here. Like, I'm really glad I made that, the decision to come here. So I'd be curious to know, like, what was that moment for you? Like, did you have that moment? Did you have like a moment where you were like, yes, like I made the right decision. Like I'm, I'm a better person because of this. I'd be curious to hear what that was.
Are we keeping the same order or are we just jumping
Rain,
in?
Raina, you hop right in.
Okay. Um, so mine was actually like I can distinctly remember the exact moment where I was like, wow, my life is not the same. My parents came to visit me when I was in Spain, and they actually said to me, "You are not the same girl that left home a few months ago." And at first I was like, what do you mean? Like, that's rude. But they meant it in the best way possible. They came to visit, and I grew up in like rural Minnesota. We don't have public transportation. Like, everybody drives their own cars everywhere. I know everybody when I go to the local Target, like the local gas station. I see everyone I know. And I was living in Barcelona in Spain, in a major city for the first time. And my parents came and visited me, and I took them out to dinner with my host mom, who did not speak a lick of English. So I spent the whole night translating between the two of them because I had grown basically fluent after my few weeks there. And then I remember my parents like wanted to take me on a little weekend trip, and I booked all of our flights, all of our trains. I navigated the subway for them. I was the one talking to locals, getting like directions on where to go eat, where's the best recommendations. And my parents, who are also avid travelers, were just floored by the fact that an 18-year-old girl was navigating Europe and all of like the nuances that go with that completely on her own day to day, and then was showing them up in a way, which I just thought was really cool. It was really different and really empowering, honestly, to be like, okay, yeah, I can do this. Like, here's some proof of what I've actually done. Somebody's noticing it. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think that's so cool because not only were you like able to show them like a place that was really special to you, but also being able to like speak Spanish and being able to navigate, them around. I think that's amazing. And sometimes like that change and that development happens so gradually that sometimes you don't recognize it when you're actually in it. But then, you know, um, when your parents were there and you were able to actually like put into practice what you've learned, like that must have been such a cool feeling. Liv,
Yeah, it was
Kelsey, anything? I love that. I love that so much. Liv, Kelsey, anything for either
Um,
of you as far as that like defining moment?
so there definitely were like a few small moments that I realized like, hey, this is different. For Voyager, I saw myself being a completely different person. I remember calling my mom and be like, hey, I feel like I'm lying to these people almost because my personality just felt so different. I was comfortable like walking alone in a city, and me who's from New York City, New Jersey would have never done that. And I don't take public transportation at home. I had never taken the subway or the bus. And here I am in places like Australia, traveling completely by myself at points because there was stuff I wanted to do. But I was comfortable like navigating a whole new place and finding places to go, public transit. I was like starting to lead the group, and it was just such a different experience for me where like my friends would be like, "Hey, do you consider yourself an extrovert now?" Cuz COVID hit while I was in high school, so I was very much in my house from small town going, I don't need to socialize. And then this trip helped me grow so much independence-wise, where I was feeling completely confident in myself to go conquer the world on my own and with friends if I wanted.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, and a lot of students that I work with, like that's like something that they talk about a little bit about too is, and this is kind of like a sidebar, but um like students that grew up like were in high school during COVID, or like the students that are joining for like our fall cohorts that are are going right from high school to their gap before college. Like COVID was like their freshman year of high school. And I mean, it's like, and even for like students that are a little bit older, like they were in high school during COVID. And it's I mean, that really can really like put a toll on you just from like a socialization aspect too. So I think that's another thing that's so cool about these programs is it's kind of like an opportunity to kind of like reclaim like that those sorts of experiences. And I think that's what makes these programs even more special, just given like the timing and the world and everything. Um, Kelsey, talk to me a little bit about your sort of turning point, defining moment.
So I would say I had two. One was it's like still unbelievable to even say, but I was at the top of the Eiffel Tower at night. So that's a tip. If you end up going to Paris and you go to the Eiffel Tower, go right around like sunset time because if you go at night, it lights up. It's beautiful. But I was up top of the Eiffel Tower eating macaroons with my friend that I met in the airport in New Jersey. And I was just looking out, like thinking of little old me in my little town in New Jersey, and just thinking of how small my world had been up until now. And like the fact that I had this opportunity and I was standing on top of the Eiffel Tower while it was twinkling and I was eating a macaroon. It was just out of a book, like just an unreal moment. And I just started crying because I was like, this is real life. Like, I get to experience this and I deserve it, but it was just unreal. And I'll always remember that day. But the other one, I was on the beach of Barcelona with my friends. So the first 2 weeks of my trip, we were all together seeing new places. And then we were about to go off to the countries that we picked to learn our language. There were a few options. And of course, me and all my friends were going to different ones. So we were sitting on the beach and I just asked them, like, what can we work on? Like, what do I want to see from each of you, like with growth? And what can I work on to be a better version of myself while I'm away in this country? And we had a conversation and we all just started crying because we were just so proud of each other. And it was a deep conversation and we had gotten to know each other on this level that we were able to help each other grow in such a way of saying, like, I think if you can work on this and you can become an even stronger version of yourself in this journey that's already empowering. It was just such like a personal, amazing moment. And I think we'll all remember it forever because we were on the beach in Barcelona too. That was incredible. But just like that just shows how deep those connections were, that we were having those moments of like reflecting on the trip and thinking of what can we do to become better people. And like you just meet the
Yeah.
most people on these trips.
Oh, I love that so much. And I think that that's such a testament to like the reflection part of this and like the self-discovery part of this and everything like that. And I think that there's definitely like there's a connection that is formed when you are traveling with a group of 30 students all together at the same time. Like it happens, right? Like even people that like you think, oh, I have nothing in common with this person, like you make some sort of connection by the end. And I always think this is really cool, and I always remind students of this whenever I'm traveling with them or helping out with orientations or things like that. Like this will be the only moment in time where you are all together with this group of people and you're all having this experience. It's together. It's a shared experience for all of you. And nobody else can ever take this away from you. And this is something you will always share. And I just think that's such a cool thing. And I think that's why people come back from these programs and it's just like, it's almost kind of like you're like buzzing a little bit because it does kind of feel like magic. I mean, it's such a cool thing. And I would say like that would be kind of what I would love to do with like our last bit of time here is talk a little bit about sort of like that post-gap experience and like the impacts of that. And like, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of how this is all, impacted you. But I would love to hear, maybe like a little bit about what that maybe biggest takeaway was. Like maybe something that you went into your gap year thinking you were going to do, but then maybe like that changed a little bit or just something like that. I'd love to hear a little bit about, um, you know, what it's been like after that and maybe potentially also what the transition was like coming from your gap program to back to college or whatever happened, I guess, after that point. If you want to share a little bit about that. That was kind of a loaded question, but do with it what you will.
So I just got back from my Voyager trip at the April 26th. So it's only been a month that I have been home. And when I left for Changemaker in September, I was fully under the impression that I did not want to go to college. It was called a gap year, and I was just taking this time to figure out what I would be doing next. I thought I would go on this trip and maybe try and find a job. I knew EF was putting us with some great organizations in Changemaker, where we worked with a lot of nonprofits. And so I was really excited to see the other paths out there if you were interested in college. And the staff there really helped me out. They gave me a lot of like great advice. They told me what programs were great if I wasn't interested in college. And then when I came home from Voyager, which almost feels like a year later, I am fully excited for college. I completely want to go because now I feel like I had a great hand at the social aspect. I know what to expect going into college because I kind of got a taste of it already. But also, I know that it would be just like my gap year in the sense I'd have this structure where I was free to explore everything I wanted. I'm actively learning, doing something, yet the world is mine. I could keep trying new things and meeting new people. And I was actually really scared when I came home because I thought it was too late for me to join college. I remember thinking my 17-year-old sister and I would be in the same grade for college now. And I'm like, that's crazy. I feel behind. I don't know what to do. And you just have to remind yourself we're all on different timelines. There's no correct path. I just went to maybe 8 different countries, and I've been places that adults haven't been in their whole lifetime. And I've now have a lot of experience, maybe not college credits, which you could totally get with EF if you choose to do so. But I have experience that I felt like I needed and the time I needed to get excited for college. Because if I had gone in September, I wouldn't have had the same enthusiasm to sit there and learn that I do now.
I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that, Liv. And yeah, I think it's such a testament to like you can kind of change your path a little bit through something like this. It's a transformative experience for sure. Raina, Kelsey, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I can go. Um, so I know I said at the beginning that like when I went into my gap year, I didn't know if college was for me, and I was kind of hoping that maybe my gap year would allow me to figure out if it would be for me. And leaving it, I was like, yeah, absolutely not. There's no way you can get me to go and sit in a classroom after I just saw the world. Because on my gap year, I did 23 countries. I stayed after for an extra month and just did excess traveling because I couldn't get myself to come home. And it's been over 2 years since I've been back. And I would be lying if I said I did not think about it every single day. So one of the I when I did come home though, I did get an offer from my internship in Berlin. So I worked with them for an entire summer as I got home looking for job opportunities or part-time school to figure out what I wanted to do. So I stayed on with them, and then I had the opportunity to go on a little like discovery flight, is what somebody called it. So I got to go up in this little plane and kind of just test it out. And by the time I was on the ground, I signed up for like 6 months worth of lessons to become a pilot. And now I can say after the first year, I am a licensed pilot now. And I do plan to continue. I have about 4 more months until I'm instructing. And then hopefully by the time I turn 23, in about a year and a half, I will be going to the airlines. EF Gap Year was completely the reason I did this. It was like, I loved travel so much. And after a year of getting to experience it, there was no way anybody was going to tell me that I had to stop. So I found the one career where that's never going to be an issue, free flights forever. And that's my plan. And honestly, I'm so thankful for EF Gap Year because I don't know if any of you know the like fig tree analogy, where like your life is branching out in front of you with all these different figs, and you just have to choose one career path. And that has always scared me. I've always been so indecisive. So, although I'm going to go be a pilot, I've also started writing a book, and I have so much more time for all these activities and things in my life that like motivate me and make me feel passionate and happy as a person. And I still find time, like just in my day to day life, to go and see all of my friends from my gap year. And I'm actually, I'm not recommending this, but I am dating somebody from my gap year, and we've still been together for a couple of years. I'm going to see him next week, and he's in college, and I'm doing the plane thing, and it's just really cool how everybody on the gap year kind of went their own different routes and found what worked for them. And I'm so grateful and so thankful for it.
That's amazing. Wow, what an incredible journey. And that's, I mean, I think again, same situation where it's like it's so crazy how these experiences truly impact your life. Like I work at EF because I studied abroad and was like that I totally wanted to do like something totally different and then was like I need to work for EF and I've worked here now for almost, 9 years. So it's just funny how like experiences that you have abroad like they really do impact your life. Kelsey, how about for you?
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that one up. That was incredible. Good stuff, Raina. Um, I would say my gap semester taught me that if I can overcome all of that, I can do anything. I actually went on my gap semester a year and a half after I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that was a challenge of its own. Like, my mom was freaking out. I had to get this whole 90-day plan for my insurance. So I had all this medical supplies and it was so new to me. But I was like, I'm not gonna let it hold me back. And I'm so glad I did it because now I can say I did all that. Like that's amazing. And now I feel like so I'm currently actually doing a service year with AmeriCorps. And
Oh,
Mary Duggan, someone who works for EF, spoke at our like end of term um presentation, and she said she was in Peace Corps. So I picked her brain, talked to her about that when we were walking around Sintra, Portugal, of course. And we connected, and it was amazing because she was able to connect me with people who had done AmeriCorps, and I like learned it was like a resource from EF that I had just created basically because of our conversation. Um, so yeah, I'm working for a nonprofit in the healthcare sector and I'm doing media and communications work. And I've also created a blog, Instagram for people with type 1 diabetes, just to empower them to make choices like I did to go on this 3.5 month experience with EF Gap Year. Just being bold in life, like once you start, you don't want to stop. After my service year, I'm ready to go wherever. Like I am applying to jobs all over the US because I've realized that now I've discovered more of other countries than I have my own. So I want to go live somewhere new because I've lived in all of these different countries now. Like the possibilities are endless because I opened that door. And I'm so glad I did. I could keep talking about it, but I feel like you really open your mind to what's out there. I think career wise, especially because coming out of college, I was just like, I need to do this, this, and this. I don't know what I want to do, but I have to have it together because it's a race to have it together. And it's really not because I think like the more time you take to try new things and have new experiences, the happier you'll be in life because you'll know more about yourself, what you want, and what's out there. So that mindset came directly from my EF gap semester. I was not thinking like that back in 2022.
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Those every one of you like that was just I loved that and I feel like those takeaways are so strong. I know someone popped the chat's actually been very quiet. I feel like whenever we have these sessions it's like popping off, but well there was only two questions that came in here, but I know there's a question on here which is actually something that I think is important to ask, which is thinking about like maybe the most challenging part of something like this, because obviously these programs are awesome, but there are moments where it can be tough, right? Like you're away from family and friends, and I don't love ending on this question, but maybe for sake of time, we kind of do. I'm going to turn this into like I'm going to reconfigure this. Talk to me very quickly about maybe like one thing that was challenging and then maybe like a piece of advice that you'd give to someone to help them to kind of overcome that on a program like this.
I can start with this one. I think there's like always going to be the obvious ones, like things like language barrier, navigating a new city, kind of just like breaking out of your shell. But I think one of the biggest ones that doesn't get like talked about until later on in the trip is the fact that like you don't have your family and your childhood friends there with you. And you don't have the people that you've grown to know as your support system. like you're kind of just thrown into it, and there'll be times when you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have service, or when maybe you do, but you're on totally different time zones. So that like when you're asleep, your family is awake. So there's no easy contact when you need some emotional support or help with something. But I think it's really great that like it took me a little bit too long, I would say, to understand that my cohort was there for me. Like my group of people was there for me in the same way that I was there for them. And like once you get to know that and realize that, it's like you have an entirely new group of people. I don't know if anybody's ever into books, but if you, it's like the found family trope, like exactly like that. Like these people will be complete strangers one day and then be your complete family the next day. And I think it's hard to adjust to that, especially if you're not emotionally like ready to just meet someone and be like, hey, here's my life story. But it kind of forces you into it regardless. And everyone's doing the same. And it's really great to see how total strangers become like your rock after just like a few weeks of being there. And you'll grow to rely on each other for the whole entire time of it. And still after.
I love that.
Well, bounce off of Reina. That was like similar to what I was gonna say. As in, I did Changemaker, which was 20 kids, and then I went to my second one, and I had trouble making friends, not because kids weren't open, but because I was so stuck on the kids from the first trip. I had made my best friend in a group that like found family. I had stuck by them, and they were like my favorite people. And when I got to my second trip, I kind of really missed them. And it was hard to like think about like, hey, these are all new people and you're not going to find the exact copy of the people you love, but these are people who you will learn to love and gotta give them the opportunity to get to know you. And I was in Australia, which is I think 12-hour time difference, so I didn't really have my support system at home, which made it hard, but because of that, I did start to rely on the people around me. And sadly, it did take me a bit longer to realize there were people around me who cared about me. And yeah, they're like, I made some great friends. And if maybe I just opened up to them a bit sooner, I would have realized uh what great people surrounded me. But definitely just go in with an open mind and like expect the best because you really are gonna get it. It just in ways you might not predict.
Love that. Thanks, Liv.
Yeah, what I have to say is pretty similar, but I actually broke up with my boyfriend for this trip because the time difference would be so harsh on our relationship. We're back together now, it's all great. But I just knew that it would be healthier for both of us. And going into this trip, already uncomfortable, already dealing with my diabetes, I was a little bit of a mess on some days. But honestly, the way that it brought people into my life. Like there's a photo of me and this girl Sid. We had never talked before, but she noticed that I was just like a little down, and it's like a picture of us cuddling on a couch in a hostel, like just hugging. Because she saw me and she cared about me because she understood like the vulnerability and just the uncomfortableness of this moment. And she listened to me, and it was the creation of like such a beautiful natural friendship. So if anybody has to do something like that, know that it'll be okay and know that this is just you working on you. I became so much more independent and everything worked out wonderfully, but having like there were connections created because of my discomfort, if that makes sense. So worst, but honestly, so much good came out of it.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. Well, I really appreciate all three of you being here. And I know that not only the people on this call, but we record these calls and we share them out to people that, can't make the live session. So I just want you three to know, like, we really appreciate everything that you've shared and being really candid with us. And I think, like, the moral of all of this is like I said before, there's no one size fits all. There's no one path you have to take after this. The only thing that you need for this is to go into this sort of experience with a sense of curiosity and a desire to learn more about the world and more about yourself. So, as far as like what happens from here, if this is something that you are like, yeah, I want to learn more about this, like this sounds like this is exactly what I'm looking for, or even if you're just like, this sounds interesting, but maybe I need to learn a little bit more, whatever it may be, your gap year consultant is going to connect with you tomorrow. And if they don't, you can send them a message, but they likely will, if they're doing their job. And they'll basically, kind of see what questions that you still have, what other things you still want to walk through. If this is something that you're still looking to do for the fall, like time is of the essence, but it's still possible. So if that's something you want to do, we can certainly still make that happen. I would say, same thing for the spring. Like we still have spacing for the spring too. And I also have a lot of families I'm working with now that are planning for kind of like, it sounds like, Raina, how you went about it, that are planning now for 2025 or even 2026, just to make things a little bit more spread out from a payment perspective too. So there's a lot of options. I hope this was helpful for everyone that's on this call. And Kelsey, Liv, Raina, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to hear that these experiences were so meaningful for you. It helps, even just for me, like it makes me feel even better about the work that we do, hearing how great this has been for all three of you and how impactful it's been on your lives. So thank you. And yeah, I think that's all we have.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if
Yep.
anybody has any, sorry.
Sorry.
No, okay. If anybody has any questions, especially like with my experience with diabetes on the program, if you have any medical concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. I can add my Instagram handle in the chat.
Love
I'll
that.
add mine too. I'm like
I'll-
completely open to questions.
Awesome. I'll add that into the chat real quick before we wrap up.
If anyone's still
Great.
like considering it or thinking differently too, I've recommended this program to countless friends and have also sent people in my life that I love, pushed them right into it too. I'm like, you got to go do this. I did this. It was awesome. Your turn, go. And a bunch of them have actually gone as well and say the same things. So
I love that. That's amazing. Well, I appreciate all three of you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your nights. And yeah, thanks so much. And thanks to everyone for tuning in.